Todd Helton, a man synonymous with the peak of Coors Field hysteria, the five-time All-Star and four-time Silver Slugger winner, was beloved by Rockies fans for his fantastic play on both offense and defense. One of the greatest Rockies of all time, his success has consistently been downplayed because of his home stadium. Helton's Hall of Fame case has been widely debated among the baseball community, with no conclusive decision. Just recently, this past January, the voters almost elected him into baseball immortality. He received over 72% of the vote for Cooperstown induction, but he needed another 3% of the vote to get into the Hall of Fame. This video will look into what factors help and hurt his case to earn his plaque in New York, and whether or not it's realistic for Helton to eventually make the Hall. Let's first do a statistics breakdown. Helton played for a very long time, nearly 2 decades, all for the Rockies, and was never an easy out once he arrived in the league. Through his first 10 seasons in Major League Baseball, Helton not only managed to walk more than strike out in 8 of the 10 aforementioned seasons, a very much appreciated quality in a young player, but he also managed an OPS, or on-base percentage plus slugging, above 1, settling in at a remarkable 1.04 OPS for the entire span. Oh, and let's go back to Helton having more walks than strikeouts. During his first season of playing in at least 100 games, Helton struck out 54 times and just walked 53 times. From 2000 to 2008, Helton walked more than striking out, with his worst season, quote-unquote, being the 1999 campaign, where he recorded 68 walks to 77 punch-outs. Out of all the first basemen who played at least 1,000 games from 1997 to 2013, his first and last year in the league, Todd Helton leads the pack by 4 points in OPS, beating out Hall of Famer Jeff Bagwell and future Hall of Famer Albert Pujols. One of his biggest strengths, his vision, was the catalyst that led to his success. His magnum opus was his 2000 season, where he hit for the percentage triple crown, leading the league in all 3 major stats: on base percentage, batting average, and slugging percentage. He hit a ludicrous .372, winning a batting title and having the 3rd highest single-season batting average from 1990 to the 2000 decade. During that decade, he actually tied for 3rd in terms of batting average. The only 2 players ahead of him are his teammate, in my opinion, the greatest Rocky of all time, Larry Walker, and all-time great Tony Gwynn with his abbreviated chase for 400. This came along with plenty of pop as well, slugging almost 700 with 103 extra base hits. In fact, this was the 4th most extra bases in MLB history and 2nd most in the NL ever. It was also his breakout season, netting him his first All-Star game, but his MVP candidacy was probably hindered not only by his youth, not having been an established star, but also what is commonly referred to as the Coors effect. This is when accolades and statistics from Rockies players are seen with less legitimacy due to the thin air in Colorado, which allows for the ball to fly further than anywhere else. This has only increased as time gone on, with the Rockies playing their home games at Coors Field, with sabermetrics putting a higher emphasis on regulating stadium factors. Older players also benefited more prior to the humiditor era. Beginning last season, all 30 MLB teams now have to store the game balls to control the inconsistencies between them. Humiditators work by bringing baseballs to an average humidity, which means in a dry park they will become more humid and heavier. Regardless of stadium, Todd Helton's hitting stats were some of the best in the league over a 5-year span. His 2000 to 2004 stretch of dominance beats out the best of his contemporaries. He once again beats out Pujols, Lance Berkman, and Jason Giambi, some of the best first basemen of his era in terms of OPS. He also paces the group in homers, RBIs, and has the best walk-to-strikeout ratio of the group. Now let's take a look at his defensive stats. None of this era has even been discussed. One of Helton's best traits as well, his ability to play very well on both sides of the ball. His 3 gold gloves were no mistake. He ranks near the top of the leaderboards all time in WAR and defensive WAR for first baseman, landing 14th in career WAR and 4th in defensive WAR, compared to others who have played as many games of all time. He falls 2nd since integration, just behind Albert Pujols, and of course integration means since 1947. It's important to know that defensive wins above replacement is based on calculations that give value to positions, making a premium positions like shortstop or center field worth a lot more than a position like first base. For players who play DH and first base primarily, unless your name is pretty much Keith Hernandez, the more games they play, the lower their defensive WAR goes, almost in spite of good defense. This just means that if you don't play defense, for example, a designated hitter like David Ortiz, your defensive WAR becomes virtually non-existent and in the negative column. Anyway, Helton clocks in at -5 defensive WAR behind Pujols, who is known to be one of the best first basemen of all time defensively as well, with his -4.1 mark. While at their peaks, Pujols may have been the best first baseman defensively, which is definitely no slight to Helton. But let's talk about the great defensive metrics when it comes to Helton. Besides winning 3 Gold Glove awards, Helton's 9.5 range factor per game is second all-time. His 90 career zone runs place him in 4th in MLB history. If you don't know what zone runs are, it basically means how many plays a first baseman made versus how many times the ball was hit in his general direction, or his zone, quote-unquote. At one time, Helton was first among all first basemen in defensive games played at first base, putouts, and assists. The crafty lefty could simply sweep up any ball in the dirt that was thrown from his infield counterpart. In other words, he was great at picking it. Now let's compare him to Paul Konerko. Another comparable player to Helton is Konerko, albeit his prime starting after Helton's era. They are both strong offensive first basemen looking to be enshrined in the Hall of Fame. While Konerko and Helton may be similar in circumstance, they have significantly different cases. An easy way to check whether a player is on a Hall of Fame trajectory is to look at career WAR. While it's not a strict guideline, a Hall of Fame bound player, regardless of position, typically hovers in the 50 to 60 range. Helton easily meets this criteria with a very impressive 61.8 WAR throughout his career, while Konerko falls well short at only 28.1. Konerko may have been a cornerstone to a World Series winning team in 2005 and the bigger name with more homers, but other than that, he simply doesn't compare statistically to the Todd father. He crushes Konerko in all rare stats with over 100 points on OPS, more than Konerko, and still beats him handily when field adjusted, with a 133 OPS plus compared to only 112 for Paulie. Also, as shown before, he is one of the best defensive first basemen, while advanced statistics paint Konerko in a much different light. Konerko finished his career with a -17.5 defensive wins above replacement, not even in the same area code as Helton. Konerko will almost certainly miss the Hall of Fame because of those reasons, while Helton should be included because of them. If you're wondering, Helton hit 369 career home runs. Konerko, or Paulie as White Sox fans remember him, has a much more impressive 439 lifetime dingers. Konerko is a lifetime 279 hitter, whereas Helton finished with a very impressive 316 final clip. As you might expect, Helton's slugging percentage is much better than Konerko, 539 to 486. Now, let's do his comparison to Larry Walker. Helton's true contemporary to Hall of Fame contention is probably Larry Walker, his teammate who made the Hall of Fame recently. Overall, Walker is probably the better player according to the stats, but he also had outside factors help make him into the Hall of Fame. Walker played a more important position, did not play his entire career during the steroid era, which of course is about 1997 to 2007, and played some of his prime outside of Colorado. Not playing in the steroid era might have helped Walker's Hall of Fame case, as he put up dominant offensive numbers before the peak of the steroid era, for example 1997 to 2007. Walker also slightly outclasses Helton with awards, claiming an MVP in '97 and 4 more Gold Gloves than Helton in his career at a more difficult position as well. Plus stats, or adjusted stats, also help Walker more than Helton due to his time outside of Coors. Even at the age of 38, Walker hit .289 for a 2005 St. Louis Cardinals team that won 100 games. Walker began his career with the Expos, and while not quite the same hitter in Canada as in Coors, he finished within the top 5 in MVP during the 1992 season. As an Expo during the beginning of his career, Walker's 1994 Expos might have won the World Series if not for the owners ending the season with a strike. Regardless, Walker hit .322 for the Expos that year. Helton never spent any time away from the Denver franchise, although the Red Sox almost traded for him prior to the 2007 season. It should be noted, though, that Helton's OPS away from Coors Field is .855, better than former MVPs Christian Yelich and Josh Donaldson over similar amounts of games. No matter where he played, his bat was going to make an impact on the game. In 4,612 road plate appearances, the slugging first baseman at .287, .386, .469, with 142 home runs. His .855 OPS away from his home ballpark is higher than the road OPS of Hall of Famers Dave Winfield, .841, Eddie Murray, .838, Ricky Henderson, .836, Tony Gwynn, .835, Al Kaline, and George Brett, .826, among others. In other words, when it comes to Todd Helton, his OPS away from his home ballpark is better than players already in Cooperstown. How about this? Away from Coors Field, Helton's road on-base percentage is better than such Hall of Famers as Rod Carew, Eddie Matthews, Vladimir Guerrero, Honus Wagner, Tony Gwynn, and a slew of others. How about his postseason stats of comparison to other teams? Todd Helton's Rockies were basically pitiful during his career. They only made the postseason twice, with their magical run to the World Series in 2007 being something we'll most likely never see again, hence why it's called Rocktober and their amazing winning streak. If Helton had put up fantastic playoff numbers, it definitely would help his Hall of Fame case. Still, Mike Trout is most likely a Hall of Famer with terrible all-time postseason numbers and a very limited sample size. If Shohei Ohtani continues with his Babe Ruth-esque performances on the diamond as a pitcher and in the dish as a hitter, he'll be a no-doubt Hall of Famer even if he never plays in the postseason. If Helton had managed to put up any kind of impactful numbers, it would have helped his case. As it currently stands, Helton's career playoff batting average at .211 is very poor. In 15 career playoff games, he didn't hit a single home run. He played very well during Game 163 of the 2007 one-game playoff against San Diego, but that box score doesn't count towards the postseason numbers. In fact, there are examples of players making it almost exclusively because of postseason moments, such as Bill Mazeroski and Jack Morris, but baseball is not a sport where a single player can make enough of an impact to carry a player through the postseason. Helton also only made the playoffs 2 times total in his career, so he didn't have many opportunities to do much in general in October. Still, it does hurt his case that the Rockies made the World Series in spite of him, not because of him. Is that why Barry Bonds is outside of Cooperstown? Nah. Belko and the steroid controversy is the main reason he's not in the Hall of Fame. But Bonds also had his postseason struggles prior to his fantastic 2002 World Series run with the San Francisco Giants. But let's take Larry Walker's postseason stats into account. His 1995 postseason with Colorado was very forgettable, but his postseason numbers in his late 30s were very eye-opening. During the 2004 World Series, the 37-year-old Walker batted .357 as a 37-year-old with 2 home runs in the series. Helton, meanwhile, was several years younger than Walker during the 2007 Rockies playoff run. Even in 2009, Helton batted just .188 with no extra base hits. During the 2004 postseason, Walker belted 6 home runs during 3 different playoff series. What am I trying to say? For Larry Walker, playing on a different team and playing well with that team can establish credibility. The Coors effect hurts Helton much more than someone like Walker, because Helton's entire 17 years in Major League Baseball was spent playing in the high altitude. There may be controversy about their legitimacy with playing at Coors, but there is no doubt the stats Helton put up are extremely impressive. The Coors effect is probably the strongest argument against him, and it only has gotten stronger as advanced stats have dampened his original stats. In conclusion, Todd Helton was one half of a lethal duo in Colorado with prime Larry Walker alongside him in the lineup. They both put up elite offensive and defensive stats, despite the adjusted stats making them slightly less impactful. While Helton doesn't have the hardware and accolades that Walker has, he's a homegrown career stat leader for the franchise. According to Jay Jaffe's JAWS system of evaluating peak wins above replacement, Helton is 15th all-time among qualified first basemen. That's higher than Harmon Killebrew and Fred McGriff, with McGriff recently being elected into the Hall. No offense to McGriff, but the analytics say Helton was much better offensively than the crime dog. Also, you can make the argument that the 2000 MVP should have gone to Helton and not Jeff Kent. Helton finished with a Baseball Reference wins above replacement metric of 8.9, while Kent was only 7.2. While Kent's Giants won the National League West Division, Helton's place certainly wasn't the reason why the Rockies failed to make the playoffs that year. Helton batted .353 away from Coors Field that season, and the 4-time Silver Slugger led the league in both slugging percentage and batting average. Did not winning the 2000 MVP award hurt his chances at being in Cooperstown? Nah, but an MVP certainly would have made his resume seem more intriguing to the voters. Quite frankly, Helton was arguably the best first baseman of his era. That includes Albert Pujols. From 1997 to 2013, Helton led all National League first basemen in games played, runs scored, hits, doubles, runs batted in, triples, and walks. He was also second all-time in home runs. In a 5-year span from 2000 to 2004, Helton's OPS plus stat was third behind Barry Bonds and Pujols, and from 2000 to 2005, Helton's baseball reference wins above replacement metric was third behind Alex Rodriguez and Bonds. And although Helton's batting prowess usually never transitioned into October, he was a main reason why the Rockies went 21-1 in their last 22 games to advance to the 2007 World Series. In a 15-game stretch from the end of the season until the one-game playoff against San Diego, batted .377 with a .458 on-base clip and 15 RBI. The Rockies went 14-1 in those 15 games to advance to the National League Division Series. So is Helton a Hall of Famer? He might be one in 2024 or 2025. After all, he was only 11 votes shy of getting into the Hall of Fame in 2023. But for now, he's not in Cooperstown, and that's a crime and shame. But what do you think? Should Helton be in the Hall of Fame sooner more than later? Make sure to comment below and subscribe to Sports Broadcast Solutions.